Police in Greater Manchester have, in essence, been accused of unnecessary and invasive strip searches of women without explanation behind the door of a cell. Sky News has been speaking to 3 women, one of whom says she was detained for 41 hours and has alleged that she was sexually assaulted whilst in custody. The journalist responsible for this story, Jason Farrell, Sky's home editor. Jason, great to have you on. And we should say at the outset that there will undoubtedly be material that you and I are discussing over the course of the next few minutes that some people will find distressing.
Yeah.
Particularly the point at which we start. Tell me what these 3 women have said happened to them whilst in police custody. And we should remember that at the heart of the story.
So 3 women, 1 police station, although obviously strip searches happen up and down the country. And these happened over the course of three different years, actually. The first one in 2021 was a woman called Zayna. It was a welfare call. The police came into her house after someone had seen her on Zoom on cocaine and thought that she had overdosed. They came in to her house. She knocked the glasses off a police officer's face and was arrested, taken into the cell. She was unconscious by the time she arrived there. And she's stripped. And she doesn't understand why, in an unconscious state, all her clothes were removed. She was then put in custody shorts, which were given a belt.
So if it was custody shorts?
Custody shorts, they're kind of just sort of very nondescript. They're called anti-rip garments. And but she had a belt, so if she was going to harm herself, I can't see why she would be given those shorts, if that was the concern, if it was a welfare concern. And then she's left naked. Now, there's custody.
Naked.
She's left topless. And she later, about 2 hours later, finds a top, puts it on. And then what's concerning for her in her story is that, so she asks under a subject access request for the video clips of her in the cell.
Because, of course, these days, you're in a police cell, there will be a camera on you at all times.
That's right. There is a camera on you at all times, and you can ask for it. You can ask for the custody logs as well, which she did. And the first thing we have to say is it took her a long time to get hold of them. She got hold of the logs first, and the logs do not match the video. So when the video comes in, they're just completely out of sync. So the strip search is not logged at all. And normally you'd have to give a justification for that. You'd have to explain why you were doing it. There's medical examinations that are logged that don't happen. There's an alleged assault on a police officer that doesn't happen. But most worrying of all is she thinks that she was sexually assaulted and raped in the police cell or in police custody, either in the police van on the way there. Her memory is very, very sketchy, but that's what she believes happened.
If her memory is sketchy, on what basis is she alleging a sexual assault?
Well, she goes from a position of looking like she's sobering up, and then an hour of footage is missing, and then an hour later she's topless and she's behaving in a very sexual manner. So she believes she was drugged. Obviously another explanation is that the other drugs that she'd taken were kicking in. But her point is that when she went to the hospital, which she went to immediately afterwards, she complained of having pains in certain places, pointing to certain body parts. And she said that she thought she'd been sexually assaulted. And examinations show that some of her injuries were consistent with that. So that's the situation that she's in. So she has simply asked for the footage to show what happened. And the fact that they've not provided it obviously leads to further suspicion on her behalf.
We'll return to that story in just a second. But again, we have 3 separate women on separate occasions alleging the same thing. Take us through the other 2. So
not rape or sexual assault, but certainly with regards to the strip searches, they are saying that their strip searches were unjustified, and they question the motives behind the strip searches. So one is a woman who was accused of blackmail. She was accused of blackmail by someone who she had accused of sexually assaulting her sister. And she's taken in, she is strip searched, and she's completely naked. And she says there's no justification for it. She thinks that it is perhaps because she had complained about the way the police investigated her sister's case and that they were heavy-handed with her because of that. The third example is perhaps the most shocking in many ways, because here is a woman who has gone to the police station to find her partner, who is being held in custody for alleged domestic abuse against her. She needs the keys to get home. And she calls the police from outside the station and is eventually accused of malicious communications. In other words, put bluntly, swearing at the police over the phone. The police then demand a strip search, and she's not clear as to why they strip searched her, but we asked several times, what was the justification, and eventually told that she was potentially concealing a vape.
A vape?
So if your police are justified to strip search you if they believe that you are withholding something that could be something you shouldn't have. So obvious thing, a weapon. Mm-hmm. Second most obvious thing, drugs. Third most obvious thing, perhaps less obvious, but crucial evidence, maybe you could say. But also, this is a woman who's suffered potentially, allegedly, and she's, they should know this, is a domestic abuse. She's strip searched. And I'm going to be graphic here because I think we have to be. She's covering herself and she's asked to spread her legs and she's asked to completely open up and then the reverse side. They're looking for a vape. And you have to ask about the proportionality of this. I mean, she doesn't, and with each part of a police strip search, you have to say, is this part of the strip search necessary? You can't just say, OK, we're going to strip search her. You've got to reach a point, and perhaps that point is, if you're looking for a vape, perhaps that point is after you strip someone down to their underwear. I don't know. Do you really need to go that much further? So these are the questions around accountability and the way in which these things are conducted, which I think are raised quite graphically and horrifically in all of these cases.
How and when is a strip search supposed to be used? Because as I understand it, the police are suggesting that in at least one of these examples, it wasn't a strip search, it was something else.
Yeah, in two of the examples, so they're saying, and this is the difficulty here with this, because they are guided by laws under PACE. And there's a
Police and Criminal Evidence.
Yeah, Police and Criminal Evidence Act, Section 54 of the 1984 Act, which, which basically lays out that a strip search is anything that's removing anything beyond outer clothing and should always be done in private. There are certain ways. So, for example, if it is going into intimate parts or exposing intimate parts, then it has to be done with someone of the same sex. And in this case, they are done by someone who's of the same sex. And if there's sort of actual physical touching, then the medic needs to be present. If it was someone who they thought had a mental problem, for example, then there's also an issue around there should be an appropriate adult present. In these cases, there isn't. So if they're saying, well, these people suffered from mental problems and therefore that's why we did the search, therefore it's not governed under PACE, then you would think that there would be an appropriate adult. So it's really not clear what legislation they are referring to, that they would be outside of PACE.
Let's just return to Zayna for a second, and because her story, and she's spoken at length about what has happened to her. I mean, she only discovered the detail of what happened to her when, through that subject access request, she got access to the CCTV and the police logs and was able to essentially drop a chronology of the time that she spent in police custody and noticed that there were gaps therein.
Yeah, so there's a very messy chronology from the custody logs, which incidentally say a number of times she's not fit to be detained. And yet, there she stays. And so for a while, that's all she's got. So it's when she gets the video footage, which is provided all jumbled up and once put together, shows that there are these two missing hours. One, as I've already described to you, is quite concerning because she goes from being fully clothed and acting relatively normally to not acting normally at all and naked. And she spends a lot of the time in the cell naked. And that's one of the reasons why I got my producer, Liz Lane, to go through all the footage and look at it, because it needed looking at in details to what exactly happened. At one point, she's bleeding. And that's not logged either. So there's all these things that she didn't know about because she was having a psychotic episode in this cell. And she is vulnerable. And this is a question about vulnerable people. And we have, obviously, you wouldn't 2 or 3 years ago even imagine that someone could possibly be raped in a police cell. But we have had questions raised about police behaviour in recent years. And obviously, Wayne Couzens and David Carrick are two really extreme examples of where police officers have abused their powers. But since the murder of Sarah Everard, these questions are being asked, and they have to be asked. And women want more accountability of what's going on when police are in police care.